limitations and so forth. But this was laws of physics stuff, okay? And I'm not going to beat the laws of physics, okay? Even my microscope that finally succeeded doesn't beat the laws of physics. It just finds a loophole to exploit, okay? So that was number one. Number two was, I did have a lot of I felt once when I started with this near-field microscope I had, nobody believed in it. They said, you'll never pass light through a whole small enough wavelength. You'll never be able to beat the diffraction limit this way, da-da-da-da-da. And you show them, Maxwell equations out of the wazoo and simulations and calculations. They don't listen, and you follow your own guide and you try it, and eventually you start to get success. And then the academics, wow, all of a sudden there's this phase transition. It's a phase transition. All of a sudden there's this aggregation of all these particles onto this field. And it's like, the other thing I've never understood is, I've watched throughout my career over and over again, people glom onto it and say, were you so that little interested in what you spent your career on before that all of a sudden this new hot shiny thing is the thing to spend time on? And I felt like in my particular field, as my field took off, is that, I was providing signal. There were a few other groups that were providing signals. That they got into the field, they were new to it, they didn't know microscopy, they didn't know the limitations of this technology, didn't stop them from publishing, didn't stop them from claiming the moon is made of green cheese. And so, the signal stays the same, the noise goes to infinity, and SNR goes to zero. And I also felt like most of these people are paid by ultimately taxpayers. That's what their grants are coming from. And so I felt like what I had done was a net negative to society, because I was providing justification for what was basically a net negative of the country's resources and people's tax dollars to support garbage. And so that was and I worked for 12 years to bring that technique to that physical limit, and I was exhausted. And so I needed a break. And so those were the three reasons why I dropped out of academia. There's a long answer to your first question.
Yeah. Why did you return then to go back to UC Berkeley?
Well, Berkeley in particular, that's an easy answer, because I met my wife at Genelia. I was very happy at Genelia. We got married. And even before we got married, all I ever heard from my wife was her idyllic graduate school days when she was a grad student at Berkeley. And I knew the day I said I do, that sooner or later we were going to be living in Berkeley, California. So, and sure enough, I was right. And so we're Berkeley. My wife loves it. I didn't have the shiny metal, because the shiny metal acts as a deflector shield to keep most of the university away, right? So I have very minimal duties at the university and can try to run my lab in the way I'm accustomed and still have my lab on the East Coast at Genelia. And yeah, there are times when the university is really, really irritating, because Berkeley, as UGA, is a state school, so they usually don't have two nickels to rub together, so there's all sorts of infrastructure problems and stuff that get in your grill every now and then. But largely, I'm insulated, and my wife's happy. That is more important to me, so that's why. Whether I'll be there forever, I would venture not. Whether I'm in Berkeley, California, sure. But right now I'm starting to pitch an idea about the need for AI to analyze the data our microscopes take. I wouldn't be surprised if that leads to me doing that somewhere on the other side of the where AI expertise is. But I would leave the university in a minute if I thought I had the right opportunity to pursue that. So.
Okay. Cool. On kind of that same vein, are there any other differences between doing research in academia and like industry that you didn't notice?
There's huge differences. the more freedom academically, right? At one level, that's true. You can certainly, when you have tenure or even before. In practice, though, one becomes pretty quickly typecast, and you're limited to a degree by first what you know, but you're limited even more so by where. Yes, but it's just as big a decision as me leaving Bell for somebody who's doing looking at dusty galaxies to decide all of a sudden to look at bee pollination or something, right? I mean, yeah, you can do it if you're tenured, but it's not you're likely to do it because you go over to those people and they'll say, "Who the fuck are you, and why are you trying to take our grant money away? Why would we let you publish papers in our journal?" Right? So you'd have to rebuild an entire. It's not easy, right? And the other problem is the incentive structures of industry and academia are completely different. So the incentive structure of academia is basically the first incentive any young professor has is to get tenure. What do you have to do to get tenure? Well, you have to teach a lot. You have to do service, sit on committees and so forth. You have to make friends with all of the other people in your field, go to the conferences, be parts of their committees and so forth. So there's a lot of becoming part of an ecosystem. And the way I think of it, most academics, groups that I'm aware of, is because of the incentives. It's a lot like, so ants in their social organization are controlled by pheromones, and there's about 10 organizations that they're all got the same incentives, and they're all kind of going like this, doing the same sort of stuff. Quantum computing, around and around in a circle over and over again. Okay, and I don't want to be an ant. Okay, so the incentives are. You would like to think you have all this academic freedom, that you can do research, but in practice what happens is you have a lot more freedom when you're a grad student or when you're an undergrad, and all the way up through your postdoc, and then you're in the lab. It's fun. I had great fun in graduate school building my microscope and stuff. I was largely left alone to do it, because when you're at the peak of your powers as a scientist, when you just get your PhD, what do? They rip it away from you, stick you in an office, and make you the CEO of a small nonprofit. That's what every new faculty is. And their goal as a nonprofit is to bring in money from the government or from other NGOs. The thing that's common, though, is the incentive structure, which is if we don't make a profit, we're going to be looking for a job. That's a pretty strong incentive. And it works particularly well in startups because, you have a very finite cash burn before you're going to be back on the street looking for another job. And so I've been, I have a startup that I've had since 2019 doing single molecule stuff related to my Nobel work. And I've watched that organization grow with, again, chemists, biologists, mechanical engineers, but if you don't work towards an IPO or something, you're toast. And so focused on a particular goal. But another organization like that is SpaceX, right? I mean, amazing progress because of this shared goal. Get our ass to Mars, okay? That's a noble goal, it's an interesting goal. It'll have lots of spin-offs, just like when people share a same vision in a large interdisciplinary organization. There's a lot of advantage to that, and I'm harping on that. I know a lot of you guys will still end up in academic careers, but you really should keep the blinders off about, and there seems to be some sort of stigma, like if you don't become a professor, you somehow failed as a graduate. That's just incredibly wrong. It's nonsense, and many many professors will tell you that, and many people who went the other route will tell you that. It's just a to teach. Again, I think the most noble and valuable part of academia is teaching. The research part is completely secondary to the teaching part. If
you're in any scientific field, what would your career be?
how do you define science, I guess?
No research, maybe like no STEM at all.
No STEM.
No STEM, like a completely different life.
I don't know, I'd like to do something in ecology. I'd like to do something.
Social science.
Oh, well, it can't be, oh, so I have to pick any career I want as long as it isn't STEM?
Yeah.
And it isn't research, it can be anything.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. What would I do? There's a lot of paths not